When this caravan came in, and this is a caravan of a lot of people coming in this case from Honduras, if it reaches our border, our laws are so weak and so pathetic, you would not understand this, because I know how strong your laws are at the border. It's like we have no border, because we had Obama make changes, President Obama made changes that basically created no border. It's called catch and release. You catch them, you register them, they go into our country. We can't throw them out. And in many cases, they shouldn't be here. Many cases, they shouldn't be here. And after they get whatever happens over the next 2 or 3 years, they're supposed to come back to court. Almost nobody comes back to court. They're in our country. And we can't do anything about it because the laws that were created by Democrats are so pathetic and so weak. So I told Mexico, and I respect what they did, I said, look, your laws are very powerful. Your laws are very strong. We have very bad laws for our border. And we are going to be doing some things. I've been speaking with General Mattis. We're going to be doing things militarily. Until we can have a wall and proper security, we're going to be guarding our border with the military. That's a big step. We really haven't done that before, or certainly not very much before. But we will be doing things with Mexico, and they have to do it. Otherwise, I'm not going to do the NAFTA deal.
What's going through your mind? I mean, people dropping, being shot multiple times, bullets whizzing, people bleeding. What's going through your mind?
Well, Leslie was on my mind, but at the same time, I knew, I had to be smart. And you got to be smart. You got to be fast. You got to think fast, be smart. I didn't have a gun on me, but wish I did.
Left treatment, got kicked out of rehab, but learned a lot. Try and make guns illegal, but have fun trying to take away guns from a meth head. Have fun trying to track those down. The left encourages and enables dependency in so many ways. Financially, physically, if we're talking about drugs. People would trade food stamps for heroin, food stamps for rides, food stamps for weapons. I saw a lot of bad things, experienced a lot of bad things. Politicians on both sides create problems so they can offer us solutions, and then we vote for those solutions. We are always promised things that will never happen. That's why it's better just to live your life aiming to be an individual. Do you. There needs to be help for people, of course, but there's so much abuse in the system. America is essentially subsidizing people's self-destruction. And we don't need to be so government-minded. We don't need to rely on them for everything. If nobody was dependent, and if there were no problems to offer solutions to, the left would have no power.
A South Korean court jailed former President Park Geun-hye for 24 years on Friday over a scandal that exposed webs of corruption between political leaders and the country's conglomerates. Park became South Korea's first democratically elected leader to be forced from the office last year when the Constitutional Court ordered her out over a scandal that landed the heads of two conglomerates in jail. The court also fined Park, the daughter of a former military dictator, 18 billion won or $16.9 million after finding her guilty of charges including bribery, abuse of power and coercion. The court ruled that Park colluded with her old friend Choi Soon-sil to receive 23.1 billion won from major conglomerates including Samsung and Lot to help Choi's family and bankroll non-profit foundations owned by her. Park, who has been in jail since March 31st last year, has denied wrongdoing and was not present in court. Choi was convicted and jailed for 20 years after a separate trial in February. Park is the latest former leader of South Korea to run afoul of the law. Her predecessor, Lee Myung-bak, is now being investigated for corruption.
It's a disgrace. It's frankly a real disgrace. It's an attack on our country in a true sense. It's an attack on what we all stand for. So when I saw this and when I heard it like you did. I said, that is really now in a whole new level of unfairness.
Fire Mueller.
Why don't I just fire Mueller?
Fire the guy.
Well, I think it's a disgrace what's going on. We'll see what happens. But I think it's really a sad situation when you look at what happened. And many people have said you should fire him. Again, they found nothing. And in finding nothing, that's a big statement. If you know the person who's in charge of the investigation, you know all about that, Deputy Rosenstein, Rod Rosenstein. He wrote the letter very critical of Comey. One of the things they said, I fired Comey. Well, I turned out to do the right thing because you look at all of the things that he's done and the lies, and you look at what's gone on at the FBI with the insurance policy and all of the things that happened. Turned out I did the right thing. But he signed, as you know, he also signed the FISA warrant. So Rod Rosenstein, who's in charge of this, signed a FISA warrant, and he also signed a letter that was essentially saying to fire James Comey. And he was right about that. He was absolutely right. So we'll see what happens. I think it's disgraceful, and so does a lot of other people. This is a pure and simple witch hunt.
As news spread Monday that FBI agents had raided the office of President Donald Trump's personal lawyer, the mainstream media had a field day. According to the New York Times, Monday's raid opens a, quote, new front for the Justice Department. But for Dan Bongino, who served for more than a decade with the Secret Service during the Bush and Obama administrations, the raid was just more proof of how politicized American law enforcement institutions have become. To make his point, he contrasted the Bureau's treatment of Trump attorney Michael Cohen with its kid gloves handling of Hillary Clinton associates during its investigation of the Clinton email scandal. He said it's, quote, fascinating that Trump's actual attorney's office is raided for evidence, while Cheryl Mills, Hillary's lawyer, was allowed to act as Hillary's lawyer so she could take custody of real evidence. In other words, FBI agents walked on eggshells around a then Democrat presidential candidate, Hillary Clinton, but had no problem rushing in for a surprise raid on one of President Trump's lawyers. So if it seems like there's a double standard here, well, that's exactly the point Bongino is trying to make. For TheWesternJournal.com, I'm Stephen Byer.
Well, I can just tell you that we're not going to just hold in contempt. We will have a plan to hold in contempt and to impeach.
To impeach Christopher Wray?
Absolutely.
Rod Rosenstein?
We're not messing around here. They're going to give these two.
They're going to say you're just
documents.
Trump's lackey here. You're doing Trump's bidding. That's what the Democrats, they've been demonizing you from the beginning. They're going to demonize you and say, oh, you're just going to run over to the White House, help Trump out every time he's in a jam.
Yeah, well, as I said before, whenever I see evidence of Russian collusion, I'll be the first person standing out there on the steps of the Capitol that I found the Russian collusion with the Trump campaign. I haven't found it yet, but I found a whole lot of other stuff that always puts DOJ and FBI in a bad light, unfortunately.
The media, the other media channels are salivating tonight in a frothy frenzy over, once again, Trump's going to fire Robert Mueller. Trump's going to fire Robert Mueller. Huckabee Sanders was asked about this today. This is what she said.
Rod Rosenstein oversees special counsel, and only he has the power to fire the special counsel.
Again, we've been advised that the president certainly has the power to make that decision.
And I think most Americans have a good sense of justice, Shannon. They want there to be justice applied, even if you're the president. But they want it to be applied equally and even-handedly. And they don't see that happening. Nobody busted down Cheryl Mills' door. Nobody went into Huma Abedin's house when Anthony Weiner, her husband, had all kinds of information that he shouldn't have had on his computer. I mean, there's just... there
are some stark
there's something
differences
tawdry
in the
about all of
cases.
this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Zuckerberg, welcome. Thank you for being here. Mr. Zuckerberg, does Facebook consider itself a neutral public forum?
Senator, we consider ourselves to be a platform for all ideas.
Let me ask the question again. Does Facebook consider itself to be a neutral public forum? And representatives of your company have given conflicting answers on this. Are you a First Amendment speaker expressing your views, or are you a neutral public forum allowing everyone to speak?
Senator, here's how we think about this. I don't believe that there is certain content that clearly we do not allow, right? Hate speech, terrorist content, nudity, anything that makes people feel unsafe in the community. From that perspective, that's why we generally try to refer to what we do as a platform for all ideas.
Let me try, just because the time is constrained. It's just a simple question. The predicate for Section 230 immunity under the CDA is that you are a neutral public forum. Do you consider yourself a neutral public forum, or are you engaged in political speech, which is your right under the First Amendment?
Well, Senator, our goal is certainly not to engage in political speech. I'm not that familiar with the specific legal language of the law that you speak to, so I would need to follow up with you on that. I'm just trying to lay out how broadly I think about this.
Well, Mr. Zuckerberg, I will say there are a great many Americans who I think are deeply concerned that Facebook and other tech companies are engaged in a pervasive pattern of bias and political censorship. There have been numerous instances with Facebook. In May of 2016, Gizmodo reported that Facebook had purposely and routinely suppressed conservative stories from trending news, including stories about CPAC, including stories about Mitt Romney, including stories about the Lois Lerner IRS scandal, including stories about Glenn Beck. In addition to that, Facebook has initially shut down the Chick-fil-A Appreciation Day page, has blocked a post of a Fox News reporter, has blocked over 24 Catholic pages, and most recently blocked Trump supporters Diamond and Silk's page with 1.2 million Facebook followers after determining their content and brand were, quote, unsafe to the community. To a great many Americans, that appears to be a pervasive pattern of political bias. Do you agree with that assessment?
Senator, let me say a few things about this. First, I understand where that concern is coming from because Facebook and the tech industry are located in Silicon Valley, which is an extremely left-leaning place. And this is actually a concern that I have and that I try to root out in the company, is making sure that we don't have any bias in the work that we do. And I think it is a fair concern that that people would at least wonder about.
Let me ask this question. Are you aware of any ad or page that has been taken down from Planned Parenthood?
Senator, I'm not, but let me just...
How about MoveOn.org?
Sorry?
How about MoveOn.org?
I'm not specifically aware of those.
How about any Democratic candidate for office?
I'm not specifically aware. I mean, I'm not sure.
In your testimony, you say that you have 15 to 20,000 people working on security and content review. Do you know the political orientation of those 15 to 20,000 people engaged in content review?
No, Senator. We do not generally ask people about their political orientation when they're joining the company.
So as CEO, have you ever made hiring or firing decisions based on political positions or what candidates they supported?
No.
Why was Palmer Luckey fired?
That is a specific personnel matter that seems like it would be inappropriate to speak
You just made a
here.
specific representation that you didn't make decisions based on political views.
Well,
Is that accurate?
I can commit that it was not because of a political view.
Do you know of those 15 to 20,000 people engaged in content review, how many, if any, have ever supported financially a Republican candidate for office?
Senator, I do not know that.
Your testimony says it is not enough that we just connect people. We have to make sure those connections are positive. It says we have to make sure people aren't using their voice to hurt people or spread misinformation. We have a responsibility not just to build tools, to make sure those tools are used for good. Mr. Zuckerberg, do you feel it's your responsibility to assess users whether they are good and positive connections or ones that those 15 to 20,000 people deem unacceptable or deplorable?
Senator, you're asking about me personally?
Facebook.
Senator, I think that there are a number of things that we would all agree are clearly bad. Foreign interference in our elections, terrorism, self-harm.
I'm
Those
talking
are
about
things.
censorship.
Oh, well, I think that you would probably agree that we should remove terrorist propaganda from the service. So that, I agree, I think is clearly bad activity that we want to get down, and we're generally proud of how well we do at that. Now, what I can say, and I do want to get this in before the end here, is that I am very committed to making sure that Facebook is a platform for all ideas. That is a very important founding principle of what we do. We're proud of the discourse and the different ideas that people can share on the service. And that is something that, as long as I'm running the company, I'm going to be committed to making sure is the case.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cruz.
So let's, oh, and there's Jim. He's become more famous than me. If she were to win, it would create an unprecedented constitutional crisis.
It's pretty strange to put something like that out with such little information right before an election.
I hope you can let this go. Now, those are his exact words. Is that correct?
Correct. I took it as a direction. Right. I mean, this is the President of the United States, with me alone, saying, I hope this. I took it as, this is what he wants me to do. Now, I didn't obey that, but that's the way I took it.
I pledge my ever-ending loyalty.
The FBI, as part of our counterintelligence mission, is investigating the Russian government's efforts to interfere in the 2016 presidential election. And that includes investigating the nature of any links between individuals associated with the Trump campaign and the Russian government.
President Trump has just fired the director of the FBI, James Comey.
Why did you fire Director Comey?
Because he wasn't doing a good job, very simply. He was not doing a good job. I was going to fire Comey, knowing there was no good time to do it. And in fact, when I decided to just do it, I said to myself, I said, you know, this Russia thing with Trump and Russia is a made-up story.
Did you tell him that the Steele dossier had been financed by his political opponents?
No, I didn't even think I used the term Steele dossier. I just talked about additional material.
But did he have a right to know that?
That had been financed by his political opponents? I don't know the answer to that. It wasn't necessary for my goal, which was to alert him that we had this information.
But why not lay out all the information? There you've got former FBI Director James Comey breaking his silence on video about the funding of the anti-Trump dossier.
Here to react, South Carolina Congressman, chairman of the Oversight Committee and author of this brand new book, bestseller, Unified. He wrote it with Senator Tim Scott. Congressman, got to have you respond directly to that. Do you think it was necessary for him to tell the president in the step back that it was financed by your opponents, by Hillary Clinton?
It's certainly a relevant fact. Whether or not he should have told the president, the FBI certainly should have told the FISA court. That's my bigger concern, is they didn't tell the folks who authorized the warrant. It's a really relevant fact. It helps you understand the motivation behind that salacious material or allegations, but for sure they should have told the court. I think it would have been nice to tell the person who was the subject of the dossier also.
Well, he had conversations with the president, so if the president found out about this dossier, don't you think his question to Comey was probably, where did you get this information? He would, I'm almost certain he asked him that. And so for Comey to say, I never told him it was financed by Hillary Clinton, what does that say about him?
Well, of course you would want to know where you got the information, because that determines how reliable it is and whether or not it can be used. So we already know the FBI did not vet or investigate the allegations in the dossier. So if I were the president, I'd want to know, where'd you get it, and how have you vetted it before you used it?
Sure. Well, apparently, when they were talking about the dossier at the Trump Tower meeting during the transition, Congressman, it does sound, according to the book, that at one point Mr. Trump was told by Mr. Comey, we are not investigating you. So that lines up with what the president has said in the past. And also he goes on to say that apparently it does not, whatever President Trump told Mr. Comey, it does not rise to the level of obstruction of justice. He did nothing wrong. Ultimately, doesn't that help the president's case?
These Comey memos are Defense Exhibit A in an obstruction of justice. I've read them. Very few members of Congress have, and no one outside of Congress has read the Comey memos. I think they ought to be released. I think they ought to be released publicly, but they certainly ought to be released to Congress. They would be Defense Exhibit A in an obstruction of justice prosecution.
Is there any reason they should not be revealed? I mean, are there national secrets in there, grand jury testimony, any of that stuff the DOJ always says?
I hope not. Comey gave them to a law professor, so I hope not.
What about the idea of a former FBI director writing a book? What was the process? What is the process? Would he have had to, would the DOJ have to read the book before to make sure he wasn't releasing classified information? And what do you think about an FBI director writing a book?
I think it's sad. I think it's sad. One of the things Director Comey and I did agree on is we need an apolitical FBI. We had some fairly heated exchanges about that. I can't think of anyone who's done a better job of politicizing the FBI than he has in the last 36 to 48 hours by talking about tanning bed goggles and the length of a tie. That is beneath the dignity of the offices that he held. So I'm really disappointed whether or not the intelligence community's vetted this book. I hope he let them do it so he's not disseminating classified information. My guess is he did. But the writing of the book in general, and then some of the things that he's talking about, are just frankly beneath the dignity of some really important offices he once held.
Talked about how much stronger he was. The president wasn't as tall as he thought. He tried to bring him in. You got to be a stronger guy to bring me in than the president is. Real quick, when he came out with his press conference October 28th and said that we found these additional emails on Anthony Weiner's laptop, he did it because he was under the assumption that she was going to win. And she didn't want her to start her presidency under the guise of a scandal or illegitimate. What's your reaction to that?
Well, there were a lot of things that could have called into question the legitimacy of that investigation, including what he's now made reference to that some of us have alluded to a lot in the past, which is the real reason he had the July 5th press conference. It wasn't the tarmac. It was information he had about Loretta Lynch that if it became public, people would question their objectivity. Right. Look, I defended him in 2016. This is Hillary Clinton's fault that he found himself in that position, and it was Democrats that wanted to put him in jail this time last year. It wasn't Republicans. So he had a tough 2016, but he's making it worse by writing this kind of a tabloid book.
Congressman, what about Pompeo? Will he be confirmed?
I hope so. You know, Ansley, it got 13 Democrat votes a year ago. I mean, go back and look at how many Republicans opposed John Kerry and Hillary Clinton. Almost none. So for a group that likes to talk about bipartisanship and reaching across the aisle, you have a uniquely well-qualified Secretary of State candidate, and you can't find a single Democrat on the committee to support him?
Yeah, you think same-sex marriage should have been a question? That's what Senator Cory Booker wanted to know.
No, I doubt they asked that of Clinton or Kerry, and I guarantee they didn't ask, can you be independent from the person who's giving you the job? It's a double standard. Thank goodness Mike Pompeo is uniquely well qualified, and I hope some Democrats not on the committee will insist that he be brought to the floor.
Well, there are a number of Democrats who live in states that Donald Trump won big, that if they don't vote that way, they're going to be in hot water come November. Trey Gowdy, Congressman from the great
Well, another conservative has been taken off of television. Tim Allen's Last Man Standing sitcom in its 6th season has been canceled by ABC, always broadcasting crap. Of course, many are wondering if Tim biting the Hollywood hand that feeds him had anything to do with this, because just 2 months ago when he was talking with Jimmy Kimmel, he said that being a conservative in Hollywood today is like being a Jew in 1930s Germany. As you know, conservatives are being persecuted around every corner, and when Jimmy Kimmel brought up the fact that Tim Allen had been to President Trump's inauguration, you could see that Tim Allen got extremely uncomfortable.
You went to the presidential inauguration, right?
I was invited by, we did a VIP thing for the vets, and went to the Veterans Ball, and so I went to go see the Democrats and Republicans. Yeah, I went to the inauguration.
I'm not attacking you.
You get this down. I'm not kidding. You got to be real careful around here. You know, you get beat up. If you don't believe what everybody believes, this is like 30s Germany. I don't know what happened. If you're not part of the group, you know what we believe is right. I go, well, I might have a problem with that.
Of course, ABC is claiming that it was canceled because of the ratings, and they just couldn't come to an agreement with a licensing fee for the show's producer, but the ratings were actually very good. Deadline.com, which covers the television business, says that ABC opted not to renew the longtime Friday 8 p.m. anchor for season 7, despite the fact that the blue-collar sitcom was ABC's second most watched comedy this season with 8.1 million viewers. It was the third most watched ABC scripted series on the network, period. For those not familiar with the series, Tim Allen played an executive at an outdoor sporting goods store who was an all-American Christian conservative guy who had traditional family values. Of course, his character can't stand liberals or the political correct insanity that they're trying to impose on society. And in one scene from an episode which aired in December, he is seen talking about how stupid microaggressions are. A microaggression, for those of you who haven't kept up with this insanity, is when liberals hallucinate that they're experiencing racism. In this episode, Tim Allen's character was going to give a speech at his daughter's college graduation, but it had to be approved beforehand to make sure that it wasn't offensive.
Do you want me to give you some notes before you send it in?
Why, send it in? What do you mean?
The faculty committee needs to approve it after they check for microaggressions.
Intervene in Syria.
Here and just sit in front of you and tell you how bad it is in Syria. You proved once again yesterday that you have a big heart, at least a lot more bigger than Obama.
Well, Qasim Eid says he's been waiting for a world leader to intervene in Syria. He wrote that in his book, My Country, a Syrian Memoir. Qasim, welcome, and thanks so much for joining us. I understand in 2012, that was you being bombed. And that was your town being destroyed. 10,000 or so civilians sheltering, looking for eating trash and leaves in order to survive. Nothing's gotten better. In fact, it's gotten worse.
Thank you so much for having me. I was exposed to Assad's massacre and chemical massacre back in 2013. I lived for 2 years under siege and bombardment. I lived my entire life under a dictatorship that always taught us in school that America is the enemy, that the Holocaust never existed, that Hitler was a great leader. I lived in a dictatorship when we were isolated from the world. And 2011, when we marched in the streets peacefully, just asking for freedom and democracy, asking for free elections, for just the simple rights that you have it here, you're blessed with freedom here in the United States, but in Syria and in many countries, we paid a big price of blood and sacrifices just to get that right, and so far we failed.
So it failed, and now you have estimated 500,000 dead in Syria. Not many even people thought Bashar Assad, the eye doctor, would be as evil as his dad, but he's actually worse. When President Obama becomes president, he gives a Cairo speech, and you cheered. You said, this is going to be fantastic. But then the red line was ignored, and we watched all these people die. We did almost nothing. What does it mean to you that we've struck at least twice and put 2,000 troops in that area?
Well, it means the world to me, because I've been looking up for the United States as a role model in freedom and democracy, just like millions, maybe billions of people around the world who live under dictatorship look up to you guys and see you as the example for a life that we all want to have. That's why people are doing all those sacrifices back in my country. And that's why a lot of people paid their lives, more than 500,000 people, and still we are asking for the same simple rights. We want freedom. We want democracy. U.S. strikes against Assad meant the world to us because it showed us that the United States actually care. And the bad days of Obama's inaction are over, hopefully forever.
Well, now you got the Russians in there. They're going to make things better or worse?
Well, the Russians have been there for more than 40 years. They've been close allies to Bashar's father, Hafez. They've been always anti the United States in Syria. But when the revolution started, we wanted to shift. We wanted to be more into a freedom and democracy country. But the Russians right now should have a clear message that the United States will not tolerate war crimes. And we wish that President Trump will double down on his action and go and bomb Animal Assad back to the zoo.
That would be interesting. I'd hate to see we're going to pull out having done just this. Qasim Eid, thanks so much. Glad you're okay. Glad you're enjoying the country.
You write that President Trump is unethical, untethered to the truth. Is Donald Trump unfit to be president?
Yes, but not in the way I often hear people talk about it. I don't buy this stuff about him being mentally incompetent or early stages of dementia. He strikes me as a person of above average intelligence who's tracking conversations and knows what's going on. I don't think he's medically unfit to be president. I think he's morally unfit to be president. Our president must embody respect and adhere to the values that are at the core of this country, the most important being truth. This president is not able to do that. He is morally unfit to be president.
White lives matter! White lives matter!
A person who sees moral equivalence in Charlottesville, who talks about and treats women like they're pieces of meat, who lies constantly about matters big and small and insists the American people believe it, that person's not fit to be president of the United States on moral grounds.
If you're right, what is the remedy? Should Donald Trump be impeached?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I'll give you a strange answer. I hope not. Because I think impeaching and removing Donald Trump from office would let the American people off the hook and have something happen indirectly that I believe they're duty-bound to do directly. People in this country need to stand up and go to the voting booth and vote their values. Values matter. This president does not reflect the values of this country.
As we speak, the International Longshoremen's Association and something called the Diamond State Port Corporation Board are meeting at the Chase Center in Wilmington, Delaware, with leadership from the Middle East-based company Gulftainer. What they're discussing is the Port of Wilmington and selling the Port of Wilmington for $500 million to the Middle Eastern company Gulftainer. The union, the International Longshoremen's Association, is all for the deal. And it is expected to then go to the Delaware General Assembly, where it's going to be voted on by the legislature and have a whole lot of Democrat support. This is a $500 million deal. Tiger funds, which means taxpayer dollars in Delaware, is going to be used for this effort. And Gulftainer happens to be owned by the Jafar brothers, acting under the supervision of their father, Dr. Hamid Jafar, who, according to CIA documents, was the lead scientist on Saddam Hussein's weapons of mass destruction research program in the 1980s and 1990s. Dr. Hamid Jafar, according to CIA documents, is credited with creating the beach ball, a miniaturized nuclear weapon that Kim Jong-un has expressed interest in obtaining. This company, Gulftainer, has 3 deals with the Russians, including with the Russian state-owned company that exports Vladimir Putin's Club K missile launcher and the missile launch pads as well. So right now what's happening is the International Longshoremen's Association, the Diamond State Port Corporation Board, and potentially the Delaware General Assembly are selling the Port of Wilmington for $500 million to Saddam Hussein's weapons of mass destruction guru, who says local politics doesn't matter.
중국의 첫 전문 발레 무용단으로서 60년에 가까운 역사를 가지고 있는 중앙 발레 무용단은 세계 인류급 예술단체로서의 높은 공연을 통하여 중국 예술 높은 단계로 강화 발전시켜 나가려는 경제적 중국 인민의 지향과 의지를 인들은 조중조당
Ladies and gentlemen, we are getting the emails. That's right, many of the emails that Hillary Clinton deleted, which were thought to be gone forever, were actually preserved on a backup device called a Datto device, which was turned over to James Comey's FBI in 2015. As the entire Hillary Clinton email investigation went on, James Comey sat on that device and never searched it. This is a major potential case of obstruction of justice. Well, thanks to citizen researcher Larry Kawa, thanks to the coverage of big league politics, thanks to the lawyers at Judicial Watch, there is a court ruling now, a circuit court ruling from Judge Randolph Moss, who has ruled that the State Department must search this device and release its contents by September 1st of this year, right before the midterm elections. This is a big win for Trump supporters in this ongoing war against the deep state. We are learning more and more shocking information every day about the anti-Trump conspirators and the lengths that they went to subvert the law in order to target President Donald Trump and his team. James Comey, we have learned, held a meeting at his home with his brother Peter Comey during the investigation. Peter Comey is a top executive at DLA Piper, the very law firm that did the Clinton Foundation's taxes and performed the so-called independent audit of the Clinton Foundation that prevented the Clinton Foundation from being criminally charged by the FBI. James Comey's meeting with his brother Comey presents a massive conflict of interest and potentially another obstruction of justice charge. Robert Mueller, meanwhile, is coming under fire after it was revealed that he began investigating Trump campaign manager Paul Manafort while he was a partner at the very law firm that Paul Manafort was using to represent him in the case. That's right. Paul Manafort was using Wilmer Hale as his legal representation at the time that Rod Rosenstein sent an email to Robert Mueller telling him to begin investigating Paul Manafort. That is literally the definition of conflict of interest. There are so many disqualifying factors here, but Trump supporters need to stay on the offense and they need to stay vigilant. The fact that Hillary Clinton's secret, deleted emails are going to be released by September 1st of this year, according to a court ruling, is a major development in this case. And a lot of people are very happy about it. We're going to stay on this story.
Do you speak English? If you find yourself in a situation where you need assistance in English, this phrase can be a lifesaver. And because you're asking it in Swedish, you can be sure that everyone will understand what you're saying, even if their answer is no. Here's the most common way to say it. Talar du engelska? Talar du engelska? Swedish is a pretty straightforward language. We conjugate verbs based on time, which means we have past, present, and infinitive. The question, talar du engelska, translates as, are you speaking English? As in English, speaking is the present tense, talar. The second word in the sentence, du, simply means you. And you probably recognize engelska to be English. Talar du engelska? Like in English, there are a whole bunch of ways to ask this question. Let's see another one. It literally means, do you know English? Kan du tala engelska? Kan du tala engelska? When asking this question to someone you don't know, begin by saying, ursäkta mig, or excuse me. Ursäkta mig, kan du tala engelska? Ursäkta mig, kan du tala engelska? As you might have noticed, the verb tala is slightly different than talar. Remember, the verb changes depending on the time it is in.
fraud, multi-millions of dollars.
And Mayor, because Jim Comey did not recommend charges back in July, that's one of the reasons why now, at the 11th hour, these FBI agents, though, are leaking to the press what's going on with the investigation.
Well, I think, look, who are they? The FBI agents are not the Clinton lackeys, or the Obama lackeys like we have in the Justice Department, like this guy Karzik or whatever his name is.
Kazik.
Yeah, who kept Podesta out of jail. Who's now an assistant attorney. Well, no, Podesta writes in an email, he kept me out of jail.
He did.
So this guy has been leaking information to Podesta. Should be fired immediately. In the Justice Department I worked in, he'd have been fired 3 days ago, and his door would have been locked, and everything would have been seized in his office.
2 days
what
ago,
else he leaked?
A couple of days before this all broke, you're on with Martha McCallum, and you looked at Martha and go, well, look out, something's coming down, and certainly it did. What did you know? And a lot of other networks are pointing that out as if you were part of that.
I'm not part of it at all. Well, all I heard were former FBI agents telling me that there's a revolution going on inside the FBI, and it's now at a boiling point. And
so you had a general idea that something was coming.
I had expected this for the last, honestly, to tell you the truth, I thought it was going to be about 3 or 4 weeks ago. Because way back in July this started. I think they kept getting stymied, looking for subpoenas, looking for records. She said in her interview, for example, that she didn't have a memory of her exit interview from the CIA because she lost her memory after the concussion. The FBI agents who did that did what any good FBI agent would do. They wanted corroboration of it. They wanted to get the medical records that showed, is she telling the truth? God bless her, she is. Or is she lying? In which case, that's Martha Stewart. You get indicted. They weren't allowed to get the medical records.
Yeah, of course.
Well, you do that to an honest FBI agent. I mean, just an honest guy doing his job. He gets angry.
Yeah.
So this has been boiling up in the FBI for months. I did nothing to get it out. I had no role in it. Did I hear about it? You're darn right I heard about it. And I can't even repeat the language that I heard from the former FBI agent.
Well, let's just say they're leaking. All right.
We have a special announcement.
This wild day. Now we have a criminal, investigation going on at the IG, a criminal referral of Andrew McCabe, who was, of course, Comey's deputy. But now the Inspector General is investigating whether Comey knew that some of this information was classified when he transmitted it to his pal at Columbia.
Yeah, I think we ought to put to rest something that one of your guests said on the last segment about how, well, the memos weren't marked classified at the time. They were classified as soon as he wrote them. I had an experience when I started as AG of taking notes at a meeting on a top secret procedure, and when I got up to leave the meeting, my then chief of staff leaned over and wrote in big block letters at the top, TS/SCI, meaning top secret, secure compartmentalized information. In other words, those weren't my notes, those were the government's notes. And those weren't Mr. Comey's memos, they were the government's memos. And the information in them, if it was classified as soon as he put it down on paper.
Well, Judge, he said they were personal reflections, and they were personal thoughts and reflections on the meeting that he had with the president.
Personal thoughts and reflections are fine, but if they are personal thoughts and reflections about classified information, then they are classified personal thoughts and reflections, and you can't simply take them out and leak them.
Judge Mukasey, you were Attorney General when Bob Mueller was FBI Director, and
North Korea is coming along. South Korea is meeting and has plans to meet with North Korea to see if they can end the war, and they have my blessing on that. And they've been very generous that without us and without me in particular, I guess, you would have to say that they wouldn't be discussing anything, including the Olympics would have been a failure. Instead, it was a great success. They would have had a real problem. But as you know, North Korea participated in the Olympics, and it made it. Really, it was quite an Olympics. It was quite a success. That would not have happened. And they do have my blessing to discuss the end to the war. People don't realize the Korean War has not ended. It's going on right now, and they are discussing an end to the war. So subject to a deal, they would certainly have my blessing, and they do have my blessing to discuss that. Japan and ourselves are locked, and we are very unified on the subject of North Korea. We will probably be, depending on the various meetings and conversations, we'll be having meetings with Kim Jong-un very soon. It'll be that'll be taking place probably in early June or a little before that, assuming things go well. It's possible things won't go well and we won't have the meetings, and we'll just continue to go along this very strong path that we've taken. But we will see what happens.
An arrest and a takedown after that killing spree at a Tennessee Waffle House. Armed officers at a massive manhunt playing out today, going door to door, searching the woods, then the tip, leading them to the suspect. And tonight we learned that they had taken weapons away from him before. ABC's Ariel Reshef is on the scene in Tennessee for us.
Tonight, one of the most sought-after suspects in the country captured. A phone tip leading police to 29-year-old Travis Reinking in a wooded area behind his home.
Detective Williams drew down on the suspect. The suspect proned out. He told him to get on the ground. He got on the ground immediately.
Reinking led away in handcuffs. Police say he was found with a backpack and a silver semi-automatic handgun with ammunition. Nearly 36 hours of terror for the town of Antioch, Tennessee. Hundreds of police and heavily armed SWAT units going door to door in a desperate search. Neighbors fearful the killer was in their own backyard.
There's too many places to hide around here.
3:23 a.m. Sunday. Police say Reinking got out of his truck wearing nothing but a green jacket, wielding this AR-15 assault rifle. First, fatally shooting 2 people outside the Waffle House before killing 2 more inside.
Someone is shot.
Witnesses say Reinking stopped to reload. That's when James Shaw Jr. leapt into action, wrestling the gun away, stopping the carnage.
I'm not a hero. I'm just a regular person. And I think...
Tonight, growing questions over the number of Reinking's alarming run-ins with the law. This video released today, a dangerous pursuit of a stolen BMW from last Tuesday. Police now saying it was Reinking behind the wheel.
The vehicle was recovered from Reinking's apartment complex. But I would hasten to add that they had no idea who the man was.
Reinking had at least 5 other known incidents with various law enforcement. In July 2017, he was arrested by the Secret Service for trespassing in a restricted area near the White House. His 4 firearms turned over to his father, who police say later gave them all back to his son, including the rifle he's accused of using to gun down his victims.
How concerned are you that Travis Reinking was able to slip through the cracks?
We were able to effectively neutralize what we felt was the threat at the time by ensuring that he did not have the ability to purchase or own weapons.
So many warning signs. Ariel Reshef live from the scene. We heard the FBI tell you there, Ariel, that they say they did what they could to take away the suspect's guns, but that his father allegedly gave them back. Now you've learned that that father may face charges?
That's right, David. Officials say it is against federal law to transfer a gun to someone who is knowingly prohibited from owning one. Federal authorities now looking into the actions of Reinking's father. David?
Ariel Reshef tonight. Ariel, thank you.
The car carrying the president of France, Emmanuel Macron, and his wife arriving now at the White House, 9:10 a.m. Eastern Time. And this is the president's first formal state visit. The state dinner will be held tonight. And there you have the French president, Macron, shaking the president's hand along with the First Lady, Melania Trump. At the beginning of what will be a very long day of events. And as you were mentioning, the fun of the military band playing as they arrive at the White House and the patriotic moment here will be then led to a very serious meeting on pressing foreign policy issues between these two world leaders.
No, it's classified and we can't tell you anything. All I can tell you is the FBI director has no credibility.
Yes. That was during the transition. It was a briefing that Director Comey gave to members of Congress, which is classified, which I guess you cannot speak about still.
That's right.
But you and Donald Trump do agree on that. That sentence you said, the FBI director has no credibility.
Absolutely not.
You and Donald Trump are in agreement on that.
I tried to clarify that and to say yes. Coming out of that classified briefing, I said that, and I certainly meant it. However, I think it is quite different when you take a look at Comey and his relationship to the president, what he's said, what he's done. I believe him.
You believe him?
I believe him, yes. And so then was then, and now is now.
A new warning from Israel's defense minister saying that if Russia moves to place any S-300 anti-aircraft missiles in Syria, Israel will destroy them. Israeli intelligence minister Israel Katz had similar remarks in a radio interview as well today, saying if Russia places or tries to place S-300 batteries in Syria, it will be, quote, a red line for us. Russia's foreign minister said only last week after America's recent attack on the Assad regime that Russia is no longer obligated by any kind of agreement to not deploy those weapon systems to Syria, and that they are actively considering deploying those S-300s to sensitive bases around the nation. Still with me in studio is Martin Himmel, but also joining us is our senior Middle East correspondent, Mohammed Al-Qassam, live for us outside on Jaffa. Mohammed, give us a sense, really, is this just talk and bluster, or is Russia actively planning on moving these S-300 batteries to some of these high-profile bases in Syria?
Jeff, Russia was embarrassed by the recent military attack by the US, UK, and France on Syria a couple of weeks ago, and it wants to look like it's doing all it can to protect one of its main allies here in the region, and it wants to show that it will retaliate or take steps to prevent such future attacks on Syria in the future. But at the same time, let's assume that Russia does provide Syria with the S-300 missiles. I don't think that they will give total control to the Syrian military of these S-300 air defense systems. They will be manned by the Russian military. So for the time being, I think it just talks on behalf of the Russian foreign ministry as well as the Russian military. And if this step is to be going forward, I don't think that the Russians will relinquish control of it to the Syrian military.
All right, stay with us, Mohammed. We'll be back with you in a second. But Mohammed, what do you, Martin, what do you think about that specific call for a red line, a term we've heard so much about Syria? What do you think about the idea that there could be anything more than airstrikes, targeted missile strikes from Israel's Air Force? Could there be anything stronger than that, even if it is a so-called red line?
Listen, I don't think it would be anything more than airstrikes, but what they would be targeting is of significance. If S-300s being fired at them, they would fire back at the installations of the S-300s. I don't think it will come to that. The Russians don't want it. The Israelis don't want it. They both talk to each other a lot. I think it's, as Mohammed said, is posturing to tell the West, look, if you come at Syria, we're going to strengthen Syria.
Kyle Kashev was there that day at Parkland. He's a survivor of the shooting. He's a high school student in Parkland. He says he was recently called in for questioning by school officials for daring to go to a gun range with his dad. Kyle joins us tonight. So Kyle, thank you for coming on. Am I misstating that? Tell us what you did that earned you a trip to visit with armed authorities at your school. What was your crime?
It wasn't even a trip. It was an interrogation. It was a clear attempt to intimidate me, and they used very, very, very harsh intimidation tactics. I mean, at the end of the day, I went shooting with my dad at a gun range. I mean, I did everything peacefully. And I went shooting with my dad, and I did absolutely nothing wrong. I mean, I posted a video of me showing my admiration for the Second Amendment and telling people to educate themselves about the Second Amendment, because we can't trust our government to defend ourselves.
So you went to a gun range with your dad, which I think is still legal in this country, and you'd think that we would encourage this because you learn gun safety and how to handle a gun appropriately. You didn't misuse it. You got called in and interrogated. What questions could they have asked you? What would be the interrogation?
So I come into the office, okay, and it was all very, very weird. I sit down, and the school resource officer goes like this. He says, "Kyle, you're taking 5 AP classes. You're such a good student. Why would you do something like this?" And I was in shock. And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, why'd you do something like this? And they came in there with the notion that I had done something wrong by going to a gun range. So I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Well, you tweeted out a video of you at a range." I said, "Did you see the tweet?" He said, "No, I didn't see the tweet. I don't do Twitter." So I'm like, "Well, then check the tweet." The tweet in itself was a video of me shooting a firearm, telling people to educate themselves about the Second Amendment. So we talked back and forth, and then the Broward Sheriff's Officer comes into the room. He comes into the room, he sits right behind me, very, very, very close. And then the interrogation truly starts. They go, "Whose gun is it? Who'd you shoot it with? Why'd you shoot it? Who'd you shoot it with? Is it your gun? Is it your dad's gun? When did you go?" And at this entire time, I was like, did I do anything wrong? I mean, it's still America. Last time I checked, I can go to a gun range and shoot it peacefully. And then I said, "What? Like, did I do anything wrong?" And they said, "Don't get snappy with me." And then I was like, "All right, can I record this?" And they said, "No." And I mean, in reality,
they did not allow you to record the conversation. Why?
Nope. I explicitly asked. I asked the school resource officer, "May I record this?" And he said, "No."
And you told them, you were clear that you were with your father.
Mm-hmm. And they were they tried to somewhat tell me, or to intimidate me, to somehow incriminate my father. It was a real push. They came in there like knowingly saying that I was at fault for exercising my Second Amendment right at a gun range. And it comes down to this. Why should I be interrogated for peacefully going to a gun range? I asked them, I was like, "Did I do anything wrong?" They said, "No, you're not a threat." So why are they calling down me? Why are they calling down me? Is every single individual going to a gun range going to be called down? What is the end to it? Because it's a clear road to tyranny.
Well, maybe because I have children, I sympathize with your father. He's an adult American citizen, correct?
Yeah.
I mean, he has a right to take his son where he wants within the bounds of the law without getting second-guessed by some school person. I mean, it's pretty...
Absolutely.
Finally and quickly, what did he say about this?
My dad has been in shock. He doesn't understand how something so small can turn into something like, why was my son being interrogated? The school resource officer hadn't even called my father about this. They didn't even know I was going to meet him.
Yeah.
They didn't know this.
Yeah, because they don't care about his rights as a parent at all. Kyle, thanks a lot. That's quite a story, and I appreciate your telling it.
I mean, Tucker. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. We got a proximity alert for you.
Ms. Hardaway, my understanding is that you received the now infamous email from Facebook, the email calling your space page unsafe on April 8th, 2018?
No. That was not April the 8th. We received that on April the 5th, 2018.
Now on April 11th, you appeared on the Ingram Angle on Fox News to discuss this matter. The host, Laura Ingram, asked, did you get contacted by Facebook, and has this been reversed? Have you been contacted by Facebook?
We was contacted via Twitter on April the 12th.
You responded, we have not been in communication with Facebook, we have not been contacted, we have not spoken to anyone over the phone.
That's true. We had been in contact with them. We haven't spoken to anyone over the phone.
Right, they said it was in direct communications with us, and we had not been in direct communication.
Did you, on that show, say that you were not contacted?
We were not contacted. We was contacted on the 12th. We was contacted on the 12th via Twitter.
All right, so are you saying that you did not lie on that show, or you did lie?
We did not lie on that show. We did that show on the 11th. We was contacted by Twitter on the 12th, by Facebook on the 12th via Twitter. And when we looked in our verifies, there they were.
Is it your testimony today that as of April 11th, when you went on Ms. Ingram's show and said that Mr. Zuckerberg had lied about trying to contact you, that Facebook never reached out to you or Ms. Richardson about this issue?
Mark Zuckerberg said that they was in direct communication with us. That, like they had spoken to us. They did not do that.
Did you get information from Zuckerberg or Facebook?
No.
Any means of communication?
No.
You just said you got it through Twitter.
We got it through Twitter on the 12th, on April the 12th.
And that's staying.
Hold on for a moment. Miss Jackson, don't try to mince my words. Let me explain to you this here. April the 5th, 2018, they took and they deemed us unsafe to the community and told us it wasn't appealable. That was April the 12th. Oh, you don't have a right to silence my voice.
Well, now I've always heard though that diamonds are girls' best.
They are, and they hard too. And if I got to be hard and be firm with you, I will. You're not going to brush us off and dismiss us. No, you're not. Like we don't have merit here.
But
these people censored us for no reason. They put limitations on our page for no reason, and that was wrong.
But rather than diamonds, you're seeking money with Facebook. Isn't that correct?
Well, you know what? If Facebook is a platform for you to make money, then so be it. Everybody else do it.
And don't stop us from making it.
And don't make us feel guilty because we and other people that's built their brand page want to make money. We've spent plenty of money.
All right.
That's right.
Okay, I'm with you on that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just astounded that this committee would stoop to this level to be positioning you all to make more money.
We really thank the committee for allowing us to the light.
Sure
for little voices like us. It's little voices like us.
Because it wasn't you. You didn't do it.
The time of the gentleman has expired.
Rapper Kanye West has spent 4 days posting pro-Trump content on Twitter. What does that mean for America and humanity and life itself? We'll investigate just ahead. But first, Fox's Bret Baier just conducted a deeply revealing interview with former FBI Director Jim Comey. During that interview, Comey tried to claim that the Steele dossier, the one he hid information about from the president, was not central to the request for a FISA warrant against people affiliated with the Trump campaign. Here's part of it.
You called the dossier unverified, salacious. Why did you use that to the FISA court to ask for surveillance for Carter Page? Not only use it, but you led with it. A bulk of that FISA application deals with that dossier. Why?
Yeah, that's not my recollection, Brett. And I don't know that the FISA application has been released. My recollection was it was part of a broader mosaic of facts that were laid before the FISA judge to obtain a FISA warrant.
There was a lot more than the dossier in the FISA application?
My recollection was there was a significant amount of additional material about Page and why there was probable cause to believe he was an agent of a foreign power. And the dossier was part of that, but was not all of it or a critical part of it, to my recollection.
I don't know that it's been released. Hiding behind government secrecy once again. Congressman Trey Gowdy represents South Carolina. He chairs the Oversight Committee in the House of Representatives, and he joins us tonight. Mr. Chairman, thanks for coming on. What did you watched the interview. What did you learn from it?
A couple of things. Number one, the Page and Strzok he would have fired immediately, which means the two agents that were leading both the Clinton and Trump investigations should have been canned. Director Comey's recollection is flawed. If he does not remember telling Congress that his agents told him they didn't think Flynn was lying, then he needs to get his lawyers to go back and look at the transcript. We did not mishear. Maybe he misspoke, but that's in the transcript. And the double standard that he's had for the last couple of weeks still exists. You know, Clinton can lie and she ought to be president. McCabe can lie and he's still a stand-up guy. But Trump, boy, if he tells any lies at all, then impeachment is too good of a remedy for him.
And that dangerous Martha Stewart who went to prison for lying, and he brags about that in his book, right? He doesn't remember a lot. He doesn't remember when he first heard about the Steele dossier. He doesn't remember who told him about the Steele dossier. Is that plausible?
No, because he knew that Republicans paid for it, even though that's inaccurate. So if he learned about it in the fall of 2016, then it was already known that the Democrats had picked up on that work. So whoever briefed him, why would you just say the Republicans started it, but not also include the Democrats finished it? So the part about it not being part of the FISA application, not a significant part, then Tucker, why did you use it at all? And I've actually read the application, and he's just wrong. It was an indispensable part of the application, period.
So how can he claim otherwise? I mean, his first reaction was, I don't think that's been made public. In other words, you can't prove me wrong because you and the rest of the civilians asking these questions, the American citizens here, don't have access to the relevant information. But as you just pointed out, you do. You've seen it. That's not true. This forms a central part of the request, correct?
There are three parts of it. This is one of the parts. They led with it. And if my recollection is correct, it occupied a disproportionately large part of that application. So I go back and ask all those who say it wasn't important, then why did you use it? If you didn't need it, why did you use it and why did you lead with it?
So let's strip away the politics and take Trump out of this so we can see clearly. At the core is the allegation that Carter Page, the hapless Carter Page, was acting, as the former director said tonight, as an agent of a foreign power. Is that a plausible claim? Do you think any reasonable person looking at the available evidence could reach a conclusion that Carter Page is a Russian agent?
It'd be tough. I think most people that have any experience with Carter Page, which would include the FBI, because they've interviewed him on a number of occasions, you'd be more likely to call him a clown than a spy.
So what do you make of that?
And I don't say that to be disparaging towards him. I mean, I spent a lot of time with him in a congressional committee room.
Right.
If anyone needed his Fifth Amendment right to counsel, if anyone needed a lawyer while he was talking to Congress, it would have been Carter Page. I just don't. I mean, he's not James Bond. He's not Jason Bourne. It's sad, actually.
So if our top law enforcement official can say with a straight face on live television that Carter Page is a foreign spy and represents a threat to American national security. He's lying, it sounds like.
Well, I don't quarrel with the FBI wanting to run out a lead. I mean, I'm probably biased, well, I am biased towards law enforcement. Go ahead and run out the lead. The challenge then becomes when you are going to spy on an American citizen, it needs to be more than a lead. You need to have probable cause and make all proper representations to the court. The other thing I will tell you, Tucker, that I learned tonight is Jim Comey has a definition of the word leak that no one else has. Yeah. What he says is a leak is what the rest of us call a felony. Leaking is disclosing a confidential conversation, which is exactly what he did.
He came off as much oilier in this interview
You can listen to Iran's Supreme Leader, Ali Khamenei.
I stress that the Islamic Republic has never been after nuclear weapons.
You can listen to Iran's President, Hassan Rouhani.
Nuclear weapons and other weapons of mass destruction have no place in Iran's security and defense doctrine and contradict our fundamental religious and ethical convictions.
This is repeated by Iran's Foreign Minister, Javad Zarif.
We didn't have any program to develop nuclear weapons. Anyway, we consider nuclear weapons both irrational as well as immoral.
Well, tonight I'm here to tell you one thing. Iran lied. Big time. After signing the nuclear deal in 2015, Iran intensified its efforts to hide its secret nuclear files. In 2017, Iran moved its nuclear weapons files to a highly secret location in Tehran. This is the Shorabad district in southern Tehran. This is where they kept the atomic archives, right here. Few Iranians knew where it was, very few, and also a few Israelis. So these files conclusively prove that Iran is brazenly lying when it says it never had a nuclear weapons program. The files prove that.
As an African American, you're not going to make us feel guilty because we're going to get out here and we're going to take advantage of these platforms and monetize, just like everybody else.
Listen, we're not going to be silent.
No, we're not.
We're going to keep talking out and speaking out against people that try to censor people's freedom of speech.
And we're very thankful to the white Republicans that allowed us a seat at the table to speak our truth about what's going on, unlike the black men. And the reason why I say that is because we've been on a Democrat plantation. We know what it's like over there. They are the ones that condition black people's mind to make us think that white Republicans don't want us to work, don't want us to have any money in our pocket, but it was the black man that was concerned about how much money Diamond and Silk was making and was appalled about us making money legally.
And it ain't nothing wrong with African Americans obtaining the American dream. That's exactly why we voted for Trump. It's time for black Americans to come up and stop staying stuck like Chuck, listening to these black representatives.
That's right. We want to talk about white racism. It's black on black racism.
That's what
black people need to check themselves first.
That's right.
What Congress people are you referring to? Here's Sheila Jackson Lee and the exchange that both of you got, the three of you had. Listen.
Have you ever been paid by the Trump campaign?
No, we've never been paid by the Trump campaign.
You've never been paid by the Trump campaign?
We have never been paid by the Trump campain.
Not $5, not $100?
We have never been paid. We have never been paid by the Trump campaign.
Let me ask a specific question. $1,274.94.
We have never been paid.